people. Well, here we go. We got David from Connecticut, Paris, Ollie from London, Northampton, Lagos, Nigeria, Italy. Wow, all over the world, people are joining in. Fantastic, nearly 1,000 people. I'll give it 20 more seconds and then we'll dive in. Like I said, for everybody who's joining right now, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box and say where you're from. It's always awesome to see where people are joining in from, literally all over the world. Colombia, Belgrade, fantastic. All right, so with that, let's get kicked off. So welcome everybody. My name's Max. I'm the CEO and founder of Finimize. This is the second session. We just had the first one with the CEO of Ledger of the Crypto Summit. This is a 2-day summit. It's all about empowering you, our community, with the tools to invest smartly and safely. And that's why we've partnered with Ledger. Ledger are famous for creating the safest way to store your crypto. They also have Ledger Live, a brokerage platform to help you buy, sell, and exchange crypto. And Ledger will be keeping you safe, and Finimize will be keeping you smart. Not only is this the biggest virtual event for crypto investors, we've also launched the world's first finance server to be verified by Discord. So you can chat, share ideas, and become smarter together. All the information is available in the emails that have been sent out before, and also will be posted here in the chat box. So now on to the actual event. We're going to dive in. If you haven't already, please introduce yourself in the chat box with your name, and we're also going to have a poll that Ella is going to launch. This is a 30-minute panel discussion, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. You can ask your questions in the Q&A box that you can see on the bottom right, and then people can upvote questions, and then we'll make sure to ask Mark and Tim about them. So today we'll be talking about crypto and the rise of it and how it's starting to get mass adoption, etc., and how to think about adding it into your portfolio. We're joined by two very iconic investors, specifically in the crypto space, Mark Cuban and Tim Draper. They don't really need an introduction, but Mark is a lifelong entrepreneur, built and sold multiple businesses, owner of the NBA's Dallas Mavericks, and obviously Shark on Shark Tank. Super prominent crypto investor and spokesperson on the subject. Glad to have you. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks.
And then we have Tim, of course, very world famous venture capitalist, also a leading spokesperson for Bitcoin blockchain ICOs, and has invested in over 50 crypto companies, has invested in Coinbase, Ledger, Tezos, and Banker, among others. Welcome, Tim.
Great, thanks for having me.
How are both of you?
Doing great.
Doing great. I
Fantastic.
kind of wish Mark were our president today. He was thinking about
Not going to happen, Tim.
not
Not going to happen with me.
All right, guys. So what we'd love to do today is really use this opportunity to download as much information as we can from your brains, so that we can apply it in our.
Oh, you don't want to go there.
All right, maybe you password lock parts of the brain, then we can access it. But what I'd love to do basically is really sort of structure it into 3 different sections. First, start with personal insights, i.e. how to think about portfolio construction, then zoom out, talk about some of the wider trends in the industry, and then finally talk about the real macro trends. Before we do that, I would love to take a very, very short walk down memory lane. Can you remember when you first heard about cryptocurrencies, where you were at the time, how you heard about it, and what your very, very initial thoughts were? Tim, if you want to start.
Yeah, well, interestingly, it was like 2004. And the reason it was I was talking to this guy from Korea, and he told me about this game Lineage that half of Korea was playing. It was a massively multiplayer game, and he said, "Yeah, I bought a sword for my son for his birthday," and I thought, well, that's kind of odd. Why is he telling me that? He said, "No, it's pixels on a screen, and it cost me $40." And then he said, "Yeah, and I spend I have to go to work every day. And so I've hired a guy to be my avatar during the day while I'm at work in this game. And it clicked for me and I went, oh, wow, we're going to have a life in the real world. And then we're going to have this life in the virtual world. And that life in the virtual world is going to have real estate and money and you name it. Now it's gone in so many different wonderful ways since then. But that was really my first exposure.
And so he bought the swords using cryptocurrencies or?
So no. But it made me realize that it would be digital money that would be up there. And then the moment I heard about Bitcoin, I think that was 2010, 2011, I got all involved. I bought a bunch. Then I lost it all to the Mt. Gox thing. And then I thought that was the end of it. And I thought, too bad, that was going to be great. That digital currency, a new currency for all of us to use, global, decentralized was going to be the new word. But then when the U.S. Marshals office auction came up, I bid over market. And I did that because I felt like, hey, I lost 40,000 Bitcoin and I think this thing's going to be really important. And so I bid over market. Everybody else I was talking to was saying, are you going 10% below or 5% below or whatever? And I figured, hey, if this thing works, it doesn't matter if I pay, 3% above market when everybody else is bidding below, because I think this is going to be huge or nothing. And I didn't realize I was going to win all the auction, the whole auction. That was a historic moment. I'm kind of glad I didn't really talk to my wife in advance there. We would have been heavily, it was not a well-diversified move.
No. What about you, Mark? When did
to be analogous to Tim, I got involved in metaverses back in the late 90s when I had a friend that was running Second Life and some of the other earlier iterations and the metaverses that were on Prodigy and CompuServe in the mid 90s, as everybody tried to create these own little worlds. But in terms of crypto, 2011, 2012, when Coinbase first came out, I got some Bitcoin that people sent to me, bought some other things, but I really wasn't a big believer until smart contracts on Ethereum. And that's when I really started to get active and aggressive.
And when you guys decided to invest, was that just one of those, like, from what Tim was saying, it almost sounded like it came out of a gut, like I knew this is going to be either big or nothing, or did you guys really have a proper investment thesis behind it? Either of you who wants to take this question.
I never really have a proper investment thesis, but I did sort of think that that virtual world was going to have a currency. And I thought it was going to come from game to game. I thought it was going to be like, hey, you've got gold from Farmville and you've got diamonds from, some other game. And I thought that there would be some translation there. And that was the way virtual currency was going to go. But when Bitcoin came and it had such solid technology and such amazing security, I thought, oh, wow, this is going to be way bigger, way better. And then it wasn't until a little later that I realized that Bitcoin was going to be more important and more valuable than dollars, than any kind of fiat currency.
And what drove that realization? What was that, like, aha moment for you?
I think it had to do with just watching. I was down, I met with the president of Argentina, and I told him all about Bitcoin. Then I came back 2 years later and I talked to him again and I said, okay, well, Bitcoin's gone from 10,000 down to 4,000 during the time, this last 2 years. But the Argentinian peso has gone from 75 cents down to 25 cents in the same amount of time. I said, I'll make you a bet. If the Argentinian peso outperforms Bitcoin over the next year, I'll double my investment in Argentina. I have quite a few investments down there. And he said, great. And I said, okay, but if Bitcoin outperforms the Argentinian peso, then you have to make Bitcoin your national currency or a national currency. And he laughed, and I said, the way Japan did. And he said, oh, okay, I'll go check with it. But we didn't, we shook, but not on that bet. And that was Matt Cree, and he got just wiped out in the next election. But what was really interesting there was, of course, the Argentinian peso is worth less than a penny now, and Bitcoin's worth, what, I don't know, 57,000. And so clearly there was something going on there. And so as I've seen, as bad countries, and now all countries are going through this printing press world where they're just going to inflate their money, which means it deflates in value. I thought, well, this is getting to be obvious.
Yeah.
It's a hedge. People say, oh, it's a hedge against inflation. I think it's like, why would you ever hold on? As soon as I can buy my food, my clothing, my shelter, all in Bitcoin, I don't really need to hold any fiat currency again, because why be subject to these political whims of people who just decide they're going to print just a whole bunch more money? Then full faith and credit of a country doesn't mean that much.
Yeah, it's interesting because Mark and I, we were talking about something related before we jumped on here, because one of the questions that I had was just today we had Finimize, we put out a story on the OECD predicting inflation to be 4.4% in 2022. And I was curious how you guys think about, having been in this for much longer than most people, how you think about sort of shifting your exposure to cryptocurrencies. And then when I asked this before and to Mark, he said, it's not how I think about it. But sort of typically, when you talk about sort of exposure and risk exposure and asset allocation, people will tell you, hey, maybe put 5 to 10% or something like that into crypto. You never know what's going to happen. It seems like both of you have a very different way of looking at it. I'd love to dive into that. Mark, if you maybe want to start.
Sure. I look at it completely different than Tim, but Tim is one of the reasons why I bought Bitcoin. Bitcoin is very analogous to gold to me. It's a religion. There's all kinds of fables and stories about gold and the purpose gold will serve in the event of a cataclysmic event, financial or otherwise, that it's a hedge to inflation. It's not. But there's such a big following for gold that it's become a store of value. I just thought Bitcoin was a better store of value, and people believe the fables more strongly than people believe the fables about gold, and it's easier to trade, right? People literally, when you own gold, very few people own gold bars, very few people take possession at all, and they just trade digitally, right? Whether it's an ETF, some stock, or whatever it may be, it's the equivalent of trading Bitcoin in so many respects. Bitcoin is just a better version of gold. And I think particularly as, it becomes as gold becomes less interesting and less useful, Bitcoin becomes more interesting and more useful. So, it's not my biggest cryptocurrency holding, but it's large compared to most. I'd be on all the Bitcoin lists, if you will. So I believe enough in that, but I believe more strongly in Ethereum because, as I was telling you, Max, there's got to be utility in order to create real everlasting value. And so while accessibility, ease of use, and scarcity are great selling tools for Bitcoin, there really aren't, there really aren't a lot of utilities for Bitcoin yet. Yes, I know how Strike works, but I can give you a long lesson on the problems with Strike, right? And people can tell me where it's going, yada, yada. We can argue for days. But at the same time, I think, what's happening elsewhere is really where I look more than to Bitcoin.
But do you think about
that's interesting. I I have some Ethereum for the same kind of reasons, but have much more Bitcoin, partly because of this auction, but partly just because I'm a
You get
believer.
credit for going all in, Tim. Absolutely, 100%.
But here's what I've started to see, and that is, do you remember when Microsoft was just an operating system? And then they said, oh, okay, we're going to just let all you developers develop all these applications. So they developed ClickGuard and all these little applications that went on the Microsoft operating system. But then Microsoft said, this spreadsheet 1, 2, 3 is getting to be a big deal. Why don't we create our own spreadsheet and let's just put it on the operating system? And then this word perfect thing is getting to be a big deal. Let's just do our own Word application, put it on our operating system. And then slowly but surely that operating system became the whole game. I actually believe that Bitcoin's going to do the same thing.
But it takes,
everybody's tried a lot of stuff on Ethereum. Okay, now let's see. Okay, well, clearly DeFi is a big deal. Let's do some DeFi. Okay,
but isn't that contrary to what everybody says about the protection of Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Meaning you have to continue to extend it and grow it and expand it and change it and still overcome the trilemma. So what you're saying is Bitcoin right now is very fallible versus the competition. And I was selling PCs and software back in those days, right? And I vividly remember that the applications they included in Windows were just write and some random, paint and some basic things. But then when Lotus 123 was selling for $500, Microsoft went and bundled, Access and Word and Excel for $99 and changed the game, right? I don't know that Bitcoin has somebody who has those marketing chops. But, on the flip side, you have Ethereum with L1s and L2s. Those are the equivalent of all the developers. You've got people like Stacks and Lightning trying to extend Bitcoin and having some success, but nowhere near what's happening with all the extensions that are happening with Ethereum right now. Now, Ethereum's got its own issues with gas fees to overcome, and it's got its own challenge going to 2.0, so we'll see what happens there. But if it all comes down to Bitcoin versus Ethereum and all the L1s and L2s on top of it, you and I both will be in good shape. It's all the other blockchains that are trying to compete that are a lot of which are going to go out of business.
When just coming back to this whole,
I think this could be if you have the kind of downturn that you had for the .coms in 2000, sometime in the next couple of years, if you see some sort of a downturn like that, there will be a flight to quality. And so I suspect that they will fly to Bitcoin and Ethereum. They might fly to some of these others that are just keeping their heads down, doing good work. And that's what I heard Mark talking about this, and I believe this really big time, that you don't want to fly with the hype. You want to make sure that the entrepreneur who is driving the new token has a vision for that token and some real importance that he assigns to it, and that it has a real future. 20 years from now, what do you think that thing is going to look like? That is where I would put my money.
Can I just dive into that, click on that a little bit? So we have the attendees here. They're retail investors. They probably, this is part of their portfolio, and they have day jobs, and they don't have that much time to assess all these projects. We spoke about it before. Then Tim, I heard you go on Bloomberg a couple of days ago. You said you assess the engineers and the entrepreneurs behind a token. What would be your recommendation for someone who has perhaps, I don't know, after work, an hour or something like that, to dive into this, who doesn't have the resources, the expertise, and ultimately the time to do really, really deep research? Is there a way for them to get involved? And if so, how? In a smart way?
Mark, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's actually very easy now. What, use crypto. What are the applications you use?
Mm-hmm.
Period, end story. And because what's going to drive crypto more than anything is the same thing that drove fintech. It's going to preempt legacy applications with better paths to least resistance, and you'll start using them for things that you didn't used to use them before. So pre-internet, things were analog, they went digital. Then we got to apps. Now we're getting into crypto world, and you're starting to see some applications replacing what happened before. If you look at NFTs as collectibles, you can talk about that all you want, but it's just proof of concept for smart contracts and what can potentially happen. So if I'm just starting as an investor, I open up an account, I start doing different things, and I see which applications I like to use. And if I think that's valid and will continue to grow, it's the Peter Lynch used to say, when you invest in stocks, look at the products that you use and buy and like and your friends do, and those are the stocks you should look at. It's the exact same thing for crypto.
Okay. Tim, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's the best practical advice. The way I invest is I look at the entrepreneur and I say, is that a world that I want to live in? And then if it's something, and so, if everything works according to plan, is that a world I want to live in? And so very similar to Mark, you try things and you say, is this something that is going to be fun, interesting, better for humanity, whatever? Get behind it. If you feel like there's a movement happening, get behind it and go. I think that would be a nice way to do it. I wouldn't, I think if you're sitting at a bar and somebody says, hey, buy some, whatever, I think I would avoid that one.
The only exception I'll make to that was some of the meme coins that trade for 25 cents and down to percentages of pennies. I call them non-perishable lottery tickets, right? Yeah. Where they're also entry points into communities. So like with my son, we bought Dogecoin when it was less than a penny, and unfortunately we bought and sold when it was 7 cents. But it was fun, right? It was an entry into crypto, and we got to be part of the To the Moon community. Yeah. And there's a price, it's such a cheap price for that entertainment. So it's not an investment, it's entertaining and fun and the entry point into a community, which is completely different than making a decision to buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any of the others.
Yeah, just on that point, because that was what I was trying to get at with one of the previous questions, in terms of sort of how people should think about the allocation of the money that they have to invest. Can you guys give any kind of goal posting? In the
where
sense
somebody says, it depends which bar you go to.
Yeah. That's true, as with everything. But how would you think about it? Would you say, hey, put 50% in Ethereum and Bitcoin and the rest into some of these newer projects, and 5% you can have play money and you can invest in Dogecoin and all that other stuff and go for the ride? Or how should people think about this?
I'll tell you what I'm telling some of my Shark Tank companies and some of my friends who are uncertain about crypto. I tell them to take just a de minimis amount because it's not expensive. Go and download an app, open up an account, connect it to your bank, buy $100 or $500 or $25 worth of USDC, and just earn the interest on it. Because you're going to make more than you would in a savings account, and just get that initial comfort level so that it starts to earn you more than what you would get from a savings account. And even if something blows up for whatever reason, you're still probably going to be ahead. And so that's typically how I tell people to allocate to start. And then as your comfort and knowledge base grows, then you'll have more exposure and the better ability to use different applications and see where you want to invest. But I don't do a percentage allocation ever.
Tim, do you do a percentage allocation or no?
No.
Based on the previous answer, my guess would be no. But
no, everybody's different. Everybody's got a different risk profile. Everybody has different concerns. It would be hard for us to recommend any allocation. Just have some fun with it, study it, see what it can do for you, for your community, for your world. It's fun. It's great.
Yep.
I want to zoom out a little bit. Mark touched on fintech. The big theme of this conference is all about the growing adoption of crypto. And yet, if you look at the offerings that some of these incumbent financial institutions have, partly due to regulatory restrictions and complexities, etc., it's pretty thin. You're going to have to look pretty long to get access to maybe a fund or an ETF or something like that from a classic financial institution. And then you hear people like Jamie Dimon say, "Hey, all this stuff is worth crap and it's worthless," and all that stuff. What would you guys say to him? What would you guys how would you guys think about how this is going to evolve?
He's always going to get the ridiculous naysayers. I just asked him about the early days of PCs. Why do I need a PC? And then, local area networks. Why do I need to connect my PCs I just got? Wide area networks. Why do we need to connect offices? I remember when we started streaming, it was like streaming, you moron. I'll just turn on the TV, you idiot. And if I don't have a TV, I'll just turn on the radio. Yeah. You're always going to have naysayers. Those are the people who aren't doing the work. When you do the work and you start seeing the applications, put aside fintech and how people say it's just an end run on regulations. There are so many different applications that have real world implications. That's where you look.
Now, another thing is Jamie Dimon controls all your dollars.
Yes.
He doesn't control your Bitcoin. He may have done all the research and do as he does, not as he says, because he has a whole organization dedicated to crypto. He is focused. He's got a whole bunch of Bitcoin inside of JP Morgan that he's invested in. And meanwhile, he's talking out of that side of his mouth.
But why do you
watch what he does, not what he says?
But why do you think these guys like JP, etc., why are they not getting on the train, following customer demand, innovating on the product? What do you think is stopping them? Is it a mindset?
Oh, it's regulators. Oh, yeah, they can't turn on a dime. Okay. The banks, they get regulated. Regulators really do put a big damper on a lot of great industries and a lot of great innovation. Okay. Because they're regulating what was before, and then something new happens. A bank, it's like, when you have something big, think of these as big boats in the ocean. You cannot turn like a giant tanker around and go, oh, okay, we're going to do crypto. Mm-hmm. Your tanker is going in one direction and one direction alone, maybe 5 degree change. But if you got a little boat in the ocean, Mark and I kind of operate with little boats, except he owns the mast.
Hey,
but
when you run with the yellow boats,
you can do cool things with little boats.
Yep, maybe just a final question on that, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So you've been hearing more and more about central bank digital currencies, talking about sort of some of the more institutional or established institutions. What's your guys' take on that?
It'll happen. It has to happen. No chance it won't happen. It's just a question of who does it first and when. I mean, it's already happened in China, obviously, and other places. But I mean, in the United States, it'll happen for sure.
It happened with in Iceland way back when, like they're right after Bitcoin. They said we're going to do Aurora coin, and I thought, whoa, that's fantastic. A government's going to get behind this, and they're going to do this thing. And then Iceland said, oh, yeah, but it's only for this Icelandic currency. Mm-hmm. And I went, oh, you guys missed the whole point. This thing's supposed to be global and decentralized and everybody's participating. I suspect, China's a lot bigger than Iceland. Yeah. But I think they're also missing the point because they've got 1 billion people, but they're going to be 8 or 9.
Yeah, that's more for control. It's a whole different beast. I mean, just look in the United States. If you look at, in Miami, the NBA team, the Heat has an arena, which is now going to be FTX Arena. They renamed the Lakers home Staples to Crypto.com. We have Voyager. What's the thing that all those three have in common? They're all foreign domiciled businesses run by Americans who wouldn't start and operate those companies in the United States because of concerns over regulation. That's a problem we're going to have to address. You know, you talk about currency. I'm a big believer that inflation is not as big a risk, even with money printing, because it's backed by the good faith and innovation of the American people. That as long as we are the #1 entrepreneurial and innovative economy, then people are going to want to own dollars, even if they're inflated. And so that's going to keep things going. But if we lose that edge, then we stop becoming the reserve currency. Then it goes to hell in a handbasket. Then Bitcoin can be $100 million each.
And then before we open up to Q&A, anything that you say, hey, there's so much stuff happening in the space right now. Here's the one thing that really, really, really excites me and that I read about and then I want to learn about. Anything that you can share.
Go ahead, Tim.
Sure. Yeah, we have this investment in unstoppable domains. And the thing that got me excited about it is not why it's taking off. The thing that got me excited about it was it's, you know, how Facebook and Twitter are now muting people and saying you can't, you know, we're not going to move that. Nobody's going to see what Mark said here because he's, you know, I disagree with him, you know, kind of thing. And so they're putting a clamp on free speech. So unstoppable domains allows you to have mark.crypto, and I might be able to get you mark.crypto.
I'll take it.
But or max.crypto, and you can put anything you want up there. Now, what they've done now is they're selling these great unstoppable domains, but they're also putting your crypto wallet on it. You've got you can store your NFTs on it. I think that's going to end up being something that we're all going to get behind because I do think that people believe in free speech, and not just in the US, but around the world. And so people can get these things and say, hey, you can be in China and say free Tibet, and you can be in, you know, Sudan and say, I don't like my dictator.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to add, Mark? Or
my favorite right now is a token called BCT, which I forget, it's Toucan something carbon tonnage. And effectively for $7, it allows you to buy 1 ton of carbon offsets. And the typical American, you know, contributes 20 tons of waste to the environment. And so by buying $140 worth, you can offset, if you're American, you can offset your tonnage, your carbon tonnage for a given year. And then you can then effectively bond that to a Klima token if you want them to store it in their treasury. And so I think, you know, just providing, and then what I do actually, and if you have access to off-chain carbon credits, then you could get them verified and then put them on-chain. So I go out there and buy carbon offsets and, you know, and support different projects, verify them, put them on-chain, have them tokenized, convert them, you know, let them bond into Klima, and makes me feel good. You know,
what was it called? BCT.
I've always been buying carbon offsets to offset the Mavs travel, my personal travel. This is just a more efficient, more effective, more liquid way to do it.
What was it called? BCT? Some people are asking.
BCT, yeah.
And which platform does that trade on?
It's on Polygon.
Polygon.
Yeah.
All right, let me put that in the chat. Polygon. All right, awesome. So let's open up. So we have a bunch of questions here. So the first question here is from Juan Rodriguez. If Bitcoin serves as an inflation hedge, what would happen if interest rates are raised to tackle inflation? Experts say it will cause damage to Bitcoin as investors will close their positions. How do you see this dichotomy?
No, if interest rate, okay, inflation usually does happen. And I mean, interest rates usually are raised when inflation happens. And when they raise those rates, the stock market goes down because people are looking at PE ratios as compared to how much they can get just by putting their money into T-bills. They sort of compare those two, and a rate of a PE ratio of 20 relates to a interest rate of 5% and 10 and 10 or whatever. Well, that will definitely affect the stock market, where there will not be this incredible confidence that there is today in the stock market. I am not sure how it's going to affect the crypto community. I think people seeing an inflationary currency that they don't have confidence in are going to flee to something. And if they flee to Bitcoin, it's a great solution. They flee to gold. I think the older guys will flee to gold and the younger guys will flee to Bitcoin. Because if you flee to dollars, like, why would you do that? You know they're going to be worth 10% less next year. Or whatever.
Which is one of the other questions Jonathan Lopez asked. How concerned should the average investor be about future regulation from federal governments around the world? It appears that most regulators are out of touch with the technological aspects of cryptocurrencies. How should that impact our decision calculus? Mark, if you want to take that part.
Yeah, I mean, look, crypto is global, as Tim said, and the ability to start a crypto company, if you will, or is very amorphous, right? It's fungible. It'll find its way to the least protective haven, or the least regulated haven, and so there has to be a balance. Just like competing with tax havens. If you're competing, the United States has to compete with the Caymans and Ireland, and to do that, we have to offer something better to compensate for higher taxes. And so it'll be the same thing with crypto. There'll be regulation, and as long as it's not too tough, right? As long as it's soft enough, then that'll help because it'll create open doors for institutions, pensions, etc., to invest. It'll give comfort to grandma and grandpa to get their 3% from USDC as opposed to 0.02, or even in an inflation environment, because since crypto has to compete with fiat, that USDC, as an example, is going to have to pay more than fiat's going to have to pay. And Bitcoin is going to have to return more than fiat loses in inflation. And so all those things will become more and more efficient once we have the right regulation. If there's overbearing regulation, then people will flee and it'll create its own set of problems, just like the UK saw many times with many things they tried to do.
Yeah, a lot of the US things, when regulators stumble, it's usually because they're trying to attach old regulation to a new environment. And the SEC rules, those are from 1933 and 1940.
It's crazy, yeah.
80-something years ago. That really could use a refresh.
There is another question here
and who are you protecting? That's another thing. They protected back then. They protected the widows and the orphans from shysters. I think it's a different way of looking at protection today.
There's another question which I thought was interesting, given especially today the news around Square, from Shiv Mehta. How bullish are you on Facebook? Meta's blockchain, Metaverse, and DM Coin, and Block's ambitions with Spiral for Bitcoin? Mark down.
Yeah, that's my feeling on Facebook. I'm not calling it Meta. They're toast. They're toast.
Okay, why?
Just because at some point your customers recognize who you really are. And even though the switching costs are really high from Facebook and grandma doesn't want to change, my kids, my 3 teenagers aren't on Facebook and have no intention and would be embarrassed to be on Facebook. And that doesn't bode well. And when your company is being accused of being a threat to democracy in your home country, that's a problem. That doesn't end well, particularly when you don't have a solution. So you try to recreate the company entirely and take it in a different direction that I don't even think is valid. So I don't see good things in the future for Bitcoin. For Facebook.
Tim, anything you want to add, or should I jump to the next question? I'm a little more balanced on Facebook. Because I think, my wife's just addicted to Instagram, and that's true. She's older, and so that's the deal. But they continue to innovate. They bought some interesting companies. I think the censorship is the worst thing they could have possibly done. The best thing they could have done is just say, hey, we're a platform, you guys say whatever you want. But as soon as they started censoring it, that did open up an opportunity for a decentralized community to grab that market. And that's where Unstoppable is playing right now. It is and others, there are a few others. I'm starting to see more and more. I'm seeing a YouTube on, decentralized YouTube, a decentralized Facebook, a decentralized Twitter. But I think it'll be, as new technologies come along, they have to reinvent. It can't just be a copy of what Facebook was or what Twitter was. It has to be something that captures people's imaginations. And it usually does start from the high schools and the colleges where all the kids get together and go, this is cool. And then this is cool becomes $1 trillion business.
To build on what Tim just said, and he's right on, there's got to be something organic and authentic about it. And right now, that's the problem crypto is having. All 80%, 90%, I don't know what Tim sees, of deal flow that I see is recreating on one blockchain what's already been done on another. And so it's DeFi, but let's put it on this blockchain. It's DeFi, but we're going to tweak it a little bit. It's as if the people who are creating, particularly with DeFi companies and NFT-based companies, they don't know the concept or the difference between a company and a feature, right? You can't just create a company around one differentiated feature because the leader can just add that feature. Like Tim was saying, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, Bitcoin will add these features to allow it to create. Well, it's a whole lot easier for, Aave or QuickSwap or pick one to add features to compete with something on Avalanche, compete with something on Solana when, that stuff starts, if that stuff starts to happen, or, Cardano, if that stuff starts to happen. We've got to, DeFi and NFTs are done, right? Done. They're going to incrementally improve, and the people who are doing well will continue to make their products better. They're not going to rest on their laurels, but I don't need to see another DeFi deal. I don't need to see another NFT deal. I need something different that is going to break new ground. To the point Tim was making, if you're going to compete with incumbent social media, don't give me a clone of Twitter on ICP. Right? Give me something new and unique that I say, oh shit, where the fuck did that come from? That's cool, right? That's where the great things will happen on crypto, and we've got to get into that. And the internet went through the same thing. Everybody replicated the leading website. Everybody was the next eBay, the next Amazon, the next Yahoo, and then every now and then one shone through. But you've got to find new turf, not recreate old turf.
Speaking of which,
that's why we backed Tezos and Aragon way back when, because Tezos was proof of stake, not proof of work, and they started these smart contracts. And Aragon, and they've done this new governing thing that was quite cool and seems to be taking off. And Aragon, I was thinking, wow, Aragon is this new sort of jury system, where it's a decentralized jury. I think that could be pretty cool, but it could lead to a liquid democracy, and that could be the way we all start to operate. Rather than having a representative democracy, we have a liquid democracy, and that could be.
See, I would tell you, just building off of what Tim just said, for Aragon or using optimistic rollups on L2s, right? I don't look at it as a macro basis like Tim. I'm like, okay, what's a better way to do medical claims, right? Would I rather have somebody at an insurance company making a decision to authorize my request to get this surgery, or would I rather have 16,000 validators who have been trained and put up money and then have an optimistic roll-up that is allowed to challenge, and in 1 week, then it's made a decision on whether or not I get my surgery or whether or not my claim is approved? Give me that shit all day long, right? Because that is an application that preempts all that centralized junk that we have to deal with that makes everybody's life miserable. That's where we'll get with these applications. That's why I'm so bullish on crypto.
All right, guys, I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining. It was really, really awesome to get you guys' view on this. I think based on what I've been seeing here, we have over 100 questions. We didn't get through all of them. The chat's going mental. So I think people enjoyed it. So thank you so much for taking the time. Also, thank you so much to Ledger, our sponsor. Tomorrow, even though Mark said NFTs are done, we are actually about to mint our first NFT, the Finimize NFT, on our Discord server at 4 p.m. You can check it out when it drops. And then we have a session coming up now, the future of DeFi with the founder of 11FS, the founder of Aave, which Mark just mentioned as well, and the head of platform at Ledger. Make sure to tune in if you don't want to miss it. And thanks so much to Mark and Tim for joining us today. And thanks to all of you for logging in. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.
Terrific. And Mark, great to see you again.
Always, Tim. Always
We'll
a
have
pleasure.
to drop in next time I'm in Texas.
Absolutely. Always welcome. Thanks, everybody.
And you're welcome
Thanks.
when you come to the Silicon Valley. Of course, I'm trying to move more of my business to Texas.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you, Tim.
Thank you. Bye-bye.